why letting go became the start of something greater. We think progress is always about adding more goals, more responsibilities, more achievements. But sometimes the most powerful shift in a career comes from letting something go, not in defeat, but in recognition that holding on is quietly keeping us from becoming who we're meant to be. For one person, letting go wasn't an ending. It was a beginning of everything that followed. Careers today are often built on accumulation. We celebrate those who take on more, stretch further, carry heavier loads. Yet few talk about the weight of expectations we inherit along the way, the roles we clinged out of habit, the goals we pursue out of obligation, the identities we wear long after they stop fitting. Letting go feels risky, even wrong. But in a world where reinvention is not only possible but necessary, release can be a catalyst for growth. Their journey had been steady, full of commitment and persistence. They took pride in being reliable, in staying the course, in never stepping back. The structure of their career gave them a sense of purpose. But over time, a subtle pressure built around them. Responsibilities piled up, expectations hardened. Their work grew heavier, but not more meaningful. They didn't notice the shift at first. Letting go wasn't even a thought. They were the kind of person who held on, who pushed through, who endured, who stayed. But beneath the determination, a quiet exhaustion formed, a feeling that something in their life had become too tight, too small, too limiting. The turning point arrived during a moment of unexpected clarity. A conversation, simple and unplanned, opened their eyes to a truth they had ignored. Not everything we carry is meant to be kept. Some things, roles, goals, even versions of ourselves, must be released so something new can rise in their place. They didn't act on it immediately, but the idea settled in their mind, gentle yet persistent. What if the thing they were afraid to let go of was the very thing standing between them and the life they wanted? It was a question that would soon reshape the entire direction of their future. The question lingered, returning at moments they didn't expect. It surfaced during long commutes, during pauses between tasks, during evenings when the weight of the day felt heavier than usual. They began to realize that the exhaustion they carried wasn't caused by effort alone. It was a strain of holding on to something that no longer aligned with who they were becoming. They watched themselves move through familiar routines with growing detachment. Tasks they once approached with focus now felt mechanical. Responsibilities they once accepted with pride now felt burdensome. Their work hadn't changed, but they had, and the gap between who they were and who they were pretending to be widened a little more each day. Still, letting go felt unthinkable. Walking away from something they had invested so much in seemed like failure. They feared disappointing others, feared questioning their own identity, feared acknowledging that the path they had fought to maintain no longer made sense. So they held on, tight, stubborn, hopeful that clarity would come without sacrifice. But clarity rarely arrives without disruption. The tension reached a new height when opportunity appeared, one that excited them, energized them, awakened a part of themselves they thought they had lost. Yet embracing it required making space, saying no to old expectations, releasing responsibilities that had defined them for years. And that realization brought a wave of fear unlike anything they had felt before. The internal conflict became impossible to ignore. One part of them clung to stability, convinced that letting go would unravel everything they had built. The other part, a quieter, emerging voice, insisted that their future required room to grow, that they could not step into what they wanted while their hands were still full of what no longer served them. The breaking point came on an evening when they stayed late to finish a set of tasks that once meant everything to them. As they worked, they felt a sharp, undeniable truth surface. They were holding on out of fear, not purpose. And in that realization, something shifted. They understood that letting go wasn't an act of loss. It was an act of release, a release that would soon reshape their entire life. Once they acknowledged the truth, the conflict intensified. Letting go still felt dangerous, like stepping off a familiar ledge without knowing what waited below. Yet holding on felt heavier than ever. The responsibilities that once gave structure to their days now felt like anchors, keeping them tied to a version of themselves they had quietly outgrown. Their thoughts became a constant negotiation. One moment, they convinced themselves to stay the course, to honor their commitments, to protect their identity, to avoid the risk of unsettling everything they had built. The next moment, they imagined what would feel like to release what no longer made sense, to create space for something new, to finally breathe again. The two futures clashed within them, creating an emotional storm that colored every part of their life. They felt the storm most acutely during moments of silence, early mornings, late nights, the quiet between conversations. It was in these spaces that they recognized how deeply they longed for change and how terrified they were pursuing it. Letting go meant stepping into uncertainty. Staying meant shrinking into a life that no longer reflected their fullest self. The breaking point came during a conversation with someone they trusted. As they tried to explain their struggle, they found themselves speaking words that surprised them. They admitted their exhaustion, their fear, their longing, their need for something different. Hearing their own voice express these truths made everything real. It was the first time they had said aloud what their heart had known for months. That conversation awakened something powerful, a realization that letting go did not mean abandoning their past. It meant honoring their evolution. It meant recognizing that growth often requires release, not accumulation, and the life they wanted could not begin until they made room for it. The emotional tension reached its peak in the days that followed. They felt torn between obligation and possibility, between who they were and who they could become. Yet beneath the fear, a quiet resolve began to form, a sense that the decision they had avoided was now the only one that felt true. And with that resolve, they approached a moment that would change everything, a moment when letting go would become not an ending, but an act of profound courage. The moment arrived without fanfare. No dramatic announcement, no sudden collapse, just a quiet clarity settling into place. They realized they could no longer move forward while holding on to something that constrained their growth. Letting go was no longer a possibility. It was a necessity. So they did it. They released the role, the responsibilities, the identity that once defined them, not out of frustration or defeat, but out of profound understanding that their life needed space to evolve. The decision felt terrifying and liberating all at once. They stepped into the unknown with trembling hands but a steady heart. At first, the emptiness felt strange. Letting go creates a silence that can be unsettling. But within that silence, something remarkable began to unfold. Possibilities they had ignored for years suddenly came into focus. Curiosities they had dismissed now felt worth exploring. Passions they had buried resurfaced with surprising strength. They began following these threads, reading, learning, reaching out to people whose work inspired them. What started as small steps quickly turned into meaningful direction. They discovered opportunities that aligned with their values, roles that demanded their true strengths, environments where they no longer had to shrink to fit. The more they embraced this new chapter, the more they understood what letting go had given them. Freedom. Freedom to choose with intention. Freedom to grow without constraint. Freedom to build a future shaped not by obligation, but by authenticity. Looking back, they realized the turning point had never been about loss. It had been about expansion. Holding on had kept them safe, but letting go allowed them to rise. And the path that emerged, unexpected, challenging, deeply fulfilling, became the foundation of a career that finally felt like home. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.